Hi guys, this is Ekta and welcome to Skincare Anarchy in collaboration with three amazing brands for this panel that we're conducting today, which is called The Dirty Truth About Clean Brands. And I think this is going to be one of the most awesome conversations that has been, long time in the making. It really needs to have happened a long time ago. So I'm super excited to be here. Today I have with me three amazing women who represent three amazing brands. So first I want to introduce Janelle Haley, who is with OLIKA and Terasana, Kimberly Carroll, who's also with Terasana, and then Taylor Staton, who is with Pipette, which is a baby care line. So welcome, ladies. I'm super excited about this panel and moderating, and I would love to just get started. If we can give a little bit of background on each of the brands, that'd be a great place to start.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We're so excited to be here.
Yeah, it's my honor. I love that we're doing this, and I want to get started with Janelle. So Janelle, maybe you could give us a little bit of background on yourself and your role with OLIKA and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the marketing lead at OLIKA. I handle marketing and innovation, and I'm super excited to be here to talk to you about this incredible brand. OLIKA is a clean wellness brand, and we're really reimagining personal hygiene and everyday essentials by focusing on design. So we really take a lot of effort to make sure that our products are not only functional, but they have beautiful forms and they're ergonomic, they're inspired by nature, and they also have incredible experiences that are clean, from our essential oil fragrances to our beautiful hydrating flower formulas. We just really want to make sure that we're offering moments of delight and joy to everyday essentials.
I love that. I really love that. Thank you. Yeah, no, and also everyone listening, OLIKA makes the best hand sanitizer. Like the packaging is phenomenal. It's my favorite. I can't live without them. So thank you for that. Next I'm going to ask Kimberly, if you could give us a little bit of background about yourself.
Sure. So I'm in charge of e-commerce, and for Terasana, it's been a really interesting adventure. So Terasana is a clean clinical wellness brand, and we've launched one product. There are more fun things to come, but it's really about being clean, not only in terms of the ingredients that are in the bottle, but the whole process all the way back to like the source ingredients. So being clean from how it's created, water use, land use, all the way through what ends up in the bottle. And the formulas are fermentation based, which is also some incredibly cool science. It's this beautiful blend of smart science and clean ingredients. And in the clinical wellness space, there just aren't a lot of players yet. So we're having, we have a lot of fun things in store.
That's so exciting. And I'm all about the science. So I love that.
I
really love that.
know.
And also, guys, the one product that she mentioned is phenomenal. So it's not just that it's one product, it's a very, very beautiful serum. So I really, really, I've been enjoying it a lot. So thank you, Kimberly, for that beautiful introduction. And last but not least, Taylor Staton, I would love for you to tell us about Pipette and your role in the company.
Absolutely. So I head up brand marketing over at Pipette. When we say Pleasant Hip is the name for it. And we launched in right around Labor Day in 2019, really focusing in the baby care and mom care space, and saw great success using our clean formulas with a minimalistic approach, and really expanding into the family categories this year. So taking everything from building formulas that baby skin will go ahead and recognize, and really carrying that all the way through for the entire family.
I love that. And I think that's such an awesome point that, like, if it works for babies and if it works on newborn skin, then it's products that you can really trust. So I love that. That's really great. I want to actually get started with this panel and ask all of us to kind of start off by talking about the idea of clean beauty and what it really means to all of us in terms of not only the brands, but even on a personal level, right? So I would love to like just kind of, whoever wants to go first, like just kind of, what do you think about it? When you hear clean beauty, like what comes to your mind and what are things that you are thinking about from a business standpoint and from like the brand standpoint? um, you know, Maybe Taylor, you can get us started.
Absolutely. With clean beauty, I really think it's something where it's looking at it holistically. You're not just looking at, oh, is this made with clean formulas? But what are they doing sustainability? What are they doing for positive impact and taking it beyond that? Are they going ahead and doing clinical testing? So it's not just a one-off as far as, focusing on we only use one clean ingredient, but really looking at it holistically, even all the way down to the supply chain level, as far as are these ingredients being sourced sustainably? Is there like positive impacts? Because I think that for us, and I don't want to speak out of context, but I think for Kimberly and Janelle, both with their brands, that's something that we share in common as far as looking at it big picture and not just siloing the ingredients as a one-off.
Yeah, I love that. And I completely resonate with that. And I want to follow up. Janelle, what comes to your mind with like just the phrase clean beauty?
Absolutely. And it's a tricky phrase, right? There's so many
Yeah.
different definitions and meanings. And so I think there's really three things that come to mind: safety, transparency, and effectiveness. So safety is really about creating products that are good for skin, good for people, but also good for the planet. As you're purchasing these products, you're actually not making a trade-off between something you need for you and something that's good for the planet. I think that's really important. It's not just about the impact we use, but it's really about empowering people to have products that are really good for you. I think it's super, super important to be transparent about everything you're doing, particularly because there is no definition for what clean really means. It's about putting your ingredients list online, even the fragrance ingredients list online, really showing as much as you can what's happening throughout your production life cycle that Taylor was talking about. And the last one is effective, which really just means it works. We want to do all these things and create products that work and not compromise on that, because I think there's a false narrative and a false trade-off that you can have clean and sustainable products, but they don't really work. And I think all of our brands are all about the science and making sure that we have really amazing products.
Yeah, and what that makes me think of is almost like the if I were to sum up in one word everything you said, I would say optimization.
Mhm.
Because that's really what it is, right? Like, I mean, I completely understand what you're saying. And before, I don't want to start ranting yet, but like, I want to ask, obviously, Kimberly, I want you to really chime in here and tell us your perspective of just, the word and the phrase and what it means to you.
Absolutely. So I'm going to say yes and to what has already been said. I 100% agree with that. The and in this case, I think it's becoming an advocate even when the customer doesn't know they need an advocate. That as you get immersed in the space, you learn so much. And like just because it's natural doesn't mean it's good for you, right? Poison ivy, for example.
Yeah.
It's natural. I wouldn't want to rub it all over my body. So that all comes down to education and making education accessible and putting it in context, because context is everything. And like sharing the journey with the consumer, right? That being clean and being good for the environment and good for the planet as a whole, it's a journey, it's progress, not perfection. And so sort of being honest about that and just really being an advocate for understanding and bringing people along with you.
I love that. And I love that you brought up like, like the idea of good for you, because I think that really that's so much at the heart of like what I've noticed as a consumer around clean beauty, right? Is like, it's good for you. It's good. It's a good thing. And I often wonder in what context, right? Because we can be good to ourselves. And like you said, good to the planet, good to the environment, good to the communities that we interact with. But that definition, like I just want to like start this panel off by my opinion, which is that I think clean beauty is less of like a specific category and more of an umbrella term. And I think that's where like the, the conversation really kind of gets interesting, because you have all these other words that come in. I think, Janelle, you mentioned sustainability, and I would love to like kind of talk about that aspect of clean beauty, is the sustainable, component, where we are now looking for brands that are claiming to be clean brands, but they are also, really focused on sustainability. So I'd love for you guys to, just whoever wants to chime in on that and talk about the sustainable aspect and how it really fits into creating a clean brand. Janelle, you can if you can get us started, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll start off with OLIKA. So we've thought a lot about this, and it's actually really fundamental to our business model. And it's actually why we launched our hand sanitizers to be refillable. Gone are the days of single-use plastic. And so we created a product that could be a forever product, and a refill system to offer value to the consumer. And that's what we're really striving for. I think Kimberly hit the nail on the head. It's a journey. We're going to continue to find ways to innovate and bring the sustainability in, but incorporating it to our business model is fundamental. And of course, our ingredients, we want to produce them in a sustainable way. We're looking at our impact on the workers and people that we work with, et cetera. But for us, it's really, really about deeply embedding it in our business model to ensure, we're doing everything we can for the planet.
That's I think you brought up a really good point. It's about the workers. And I want to come back to that point actually, but I want to ask, I guess Taylor next, if you can comment a little bit on the idea of sustainability in the clean beauty world.
Absolutely. I think it's definitely very key, and they need to go hand in hand, having that positive impact to it. Because if you're going ahead and a formula might be clean, but to get there, the supply chain to produce that is not, then it's almost falling on deaf ears. What's actually happening behind the scenes, and being transparent, as Janelle touched on earlier. So for us, really, when you start looking at the ingredients, how are they being sourced? How are they being produced? Because there are a number of natural ingredients out there that are very scarce. There's a finite amount of them. And with that being said, they might not only be finite, but the amount of resources it takes to go ahead and produce that specific plant. And with that plant too, what people don't realize is we're not using the entire plant. We might only be using the root, is what happens within the natural space. And so then there's a lot of waste that's coming from that, and it's not very sustainable at all, from the resource element or even the outward process that's coming from that. So for us, it's really going ahead and using our biotechnology that we have to go ahead and produce, a ingredient that is not going to go ahead and be using an abundance of resources that are potentially scarce. And also taking that a step further when looking at packaging. And something for Pipette has always been, PCR, trying to go ahead and use post-consumer recyclable material within our product. So we're not just leaving it up to the consumer to be responsible as far as recycling, but taking that matter too and going ahead and putting it back into the product. So we're really giving plastic a second or third life. So it's not just going ahead and ending up in the ocean, in a landfill. We're really trying to look at things holistically.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a very, very interesting point, because, the other day I was talking to the founder of this new e-commerce website that's kind of like a Sephora online, right? And they're doing a really good job. And I brought up the idea of like, well, are you eventually going to get to the point? Because I know a lot of brands are leaning towards this idea of refillable products, right? Like instead of buying the whole product again, you can have refills and et cetera, et cetera. And I was discussing this with her, and she was like, yeah, but it's a slippery slope, because you have to really think about, is the consumer going to want to invest in that? So I think that as businesses like move towards this, exactly what you said, Taylor, like I think it's really something I'm interested in as a consumer, to see how people are going to react to this whole idea of, let's keep on, using what we're using to begin with instead of creating more waste,
Exactly.
You bring up a really interesting point about the consumer, right? Is like, would they be willing to pay for it? And what we're seeing in the data is that there's really two things that are happening. One is that they're living their values through their wallet, right? So they're going to
Yeah.
put their dollars where it matters to them in their personal value system. And then there's self-expression, right? Self-identity. I identify as someone who cares about the world by choosing this brand or this product over others. It goes back to, like, it's in the brand prism, it's the lens of self-reflection. And those two things are happening in our market at the same time. And so being a company that does good and to be good really is meeting those, it's the right time and the right place for what's happening in the consumer movement.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think that's a great point. And, I want to circle back because, while we're talking about this, I want to go back to Janelle's point about also caring about the people that are the workers, right, behind the brands that are creating these amazing products. Because this is, for me personally, is, as a scientist, it's a very something very close to my heart. I'm involved in the field of toxicology, and I've studied things like, people who work in factories and they work in, these environments that are using materials that, we would probably not consider so clean, Yeah, but what's happening is that after prolonged exposure, people are, really being damaged and they're being hurt. And, keeping that in mind as well, while we're sustaining this idea of, hey, we're clean, we're good for you, we're good for the environment, like that aspect never gets talked about. So I want to actually see what you guys think about that in terms of like the employees and what really goes behind each of your brands when it comes to formulations and who works on them, like in terms of formulating.
I'm happy to go ahead and hop on that one.
Yeah.
For us at Pipette, one of the things we're really proud about is we actually do all of our formulas in-house. So we have an amazing team and moms on the team. So they're very passionate about the products that we go ahead and put out as they're using them, not only on themselves, but their little ones. And so for them, it's really going ahead and making sure that we are kind of abiding by the EWG standard. So using, to that point that you touched on there, Edka, is those non-toxic ingredients. So it's thinking of it really, this is going to be going on a baby. This is something that needs to be safe. And so with that is, in our lab spaces, is using only the necessary ingredients, and ingredients that are not only safe, but that clean and sustainable element really is the holistic approach we try to take with that.
I love that. I really love that. And Janelle, I want you to really comment on this because you're the one who brought it up. So I would love to hear your take on this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it, to Taylor's point, is very similar for OLIKA as well. It's really about how we're processing ingredients. Again, not just for the safety of consumers, but for the safety of workers. The way we process our water is a perfect example. We use a reverse osmosis system. And by doing that, we're producing less hazardous wastewater because we're not requiring all of the chemicals that needs to go into the water in order to process it. And you think about that, those chemicals are, they're really bad for our products, but they're also really bad for the people who are working with the products. So we hold ourselves to a really high standard in our manufacturing and in our supply chain, because there can be really unintended consequences of using some of these hazardous chemicals, to your point, with the workers. And that's just one example of the things we do. Of course, we're looking at that all the way from farming all the way to like it landing, at the consumer's doorstep. But we take extra special attention to make sure every step of the way we're making choices that are beneficial for everybody.
Yeah, and especially in this, COVID, or I guess post-COVID now environment. I don't think we're post anything yet, but in this environment, especially, that's very, very much a hallmark point that you've made here, is that really caring about every step, because these materials that we're discussing, even if it's something like cardboard, one thing I do know for a fact from the literature out there, the publications, is that everything eventually goes into nanoparticle form. Okay. And so we have to, as consumers, be mindful of that. And so when we're shopping and looking for brands that are truly clean, it's important to have founders who can make claims and talk about it, like what Janelle, what you just explained, because this is something that shows that you've really thought this out. You know, you've really considered all of these aspects. Kimberly, I'd love for you to chime in on this if you have any thoughts.
Yeah,
And yeah.
and there's an interesting ad for Terasana. So similar to Pipette, Terasana owns its own ingredient stack. So we know where those things are coming from. It's the scientists are our scientists, the ingredients are coming from our teams. But what I found was really interesting is, so we use fermented sugarcane as the source of the primary ingredient. And they actually moved the fermentation facility onto the same land that the sugarcane is growing. So we're not loading sugarcane, trucking it to a different location, and then making the magic happen. Like, it's all happening right there. And even that small move, it seems small, has a big impact, right? Because think about all of the stuff we're not doing. We're not transporting.
You're preserving an ecosystem, like a business ecosystem.
We really are. There was this article in ProPublica about like how ugly sugar cane manufacturing is at large. And when I saw that, I was just like, it hit my heart in such a hard way. And it was specifically talking about Florida. And so when I first was joining the team, I was asking all of these questions, you know, that my whole advocate for others who may not know they need an advocate, because I had never heard this before. And I was really impressed with how they really flattened the system and looked for any place to optimize the footprint that was being made through the manufacturing, and then owning and optimizing every step. And that is it's a different kind of ownership and accountability from a company level than I'd ever seen before.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more people doing that.
Oh yeah, me too. And I think that that's such a brilliant concept, is to preserve, you know, if you're going to be, you know, I talk to a lot of brands on Skincare Anarchy that are, you know, for example, they're harvesting herbs from a specific region of the planet or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, if you really keep it, if you really want that ingredient, I think what you said is absolutely genius, that you have to really consider what's going to happen when you remove that specific plant or, you know, whatever it is, natural resource, and put it somewhere else and then process it somewhere else. How is that going to interact with the, you know, the ecosystem that we don't even see, you know, in the air, the trees, you know, like, how is it going? Yeah. So I really
Mm-hmm.
like that point. My next thing I really want to talk to you guys about is this idea of, you know, for me as a consumer, when I look at the clean beauty industry, I often think that it's a bunch of people that, you know, there's a lot of really great brands like yours, and then there's a lot of brands who are really they're, I think, learning. You know, they're learning and they're trying to explore this idea, and they're trying their best to do this right. But I feel, as a consumer and just somebody that's, you know, third party looking in, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the information is not available as to how to do this in the most thorough manner, right? How to create the most thorough clean beauty brand. And so I'd love for you guys to chime in on what you think are some of the resources that brands should utilize when they're doing their homework, when they're looking into, you know, the best practices, and maybe from your own experiences, you know, what you've encountered.
Yeah, I think Janelle should definitely weigh on this one. She's got good stories.
Yes, absolutely. So I will be fully transparent. You know, we're learning as well. We've had a lot of difficult conversations across our business for the past year and a half. The truth is, we let science lead the way, and there's different perspectives on like science. There are some great resources, like I absolutely love the EWG that Taylor mentioned before. I think there's also partners, like making sure things are Leaping Bunny certified, safely made. So there's a lot of different kind of certifications that you can look to. You have to really understand though, like what they require in their certification. So it's not necessarily going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. And, you know, it's a process. You know, there's things that I've learned over the past year that something as simple as aloe vera may or may not be safe for you. And that's really because there's an ingredient that exists in aloe vera before it's decolorized. So in its natural, pure state and form, there can be an ingredient that's kind of known to be a carcinogen. And so the processing is actually beneficial. So sometimes when we talk about natural, organic, we're like, that's the best thing you can do. Actually, sometimes a little bit of the processing is better for you, because you can get that ingredient to a different form. You can change that molecule a little bit so it's safer for your skin. We have a partnership with a company called Lens in order to vet all of our ingredients. So they're board certified toxicologists, and they look at all of our ingredients before we even choose them and select them. As we're creating formulas, they scan them against 16 different human and environmental endpoints to make sure they're safe for humans and safe for the planet as well. They've been an incredible partner for us, and just making sure as we're building our formulas, we're making the right choices for our consumers. So there's a lot of different resources like that. You know, you can look online. Severa has a great blog that you can follow and get like a little bit deeper on toxicology. But that's been our approach, and it's been a journey, and we're still learning. We're not all the way there, but we'll continue striving.
Janelle, you can't see me, but honestly, like every part of my being is like cheering right now. You know, the toxicologist in me is like, yes, that's exactly what, oh my gosh, you know, you really, really hit the nail on the head there. That is what we need. I mean, toxicology, you know, just for a second to talk about it, that's the stuff we really need to be worried about, because they're the ones, these board certified toxicologists are your pros in telling you if the product that you want to utilize in your beauty brand or your whatever product you're making, what it's going to look like once it starts degrading. And that's where the real problem is. That you know, later on area, that's what we need to like handle before we start making anything. So I love everything you said, and I would love for Taylor, if you want to you know, chime in on this one.
Oh, absolutely. I think Janelle definitely hit the nail on the head there in so many different ways. If somebody is looking to start a clean brand, another area that I would recommend is really looking at what you plan to do for like retail expansion. Where do you plan on seeing yourself going? Because a lot of retailers, like such as Credo, have very specific regulations that you need to go ahead and meet. So if you do need those specific clinical results, or if they do need to pass a specific toxicology test, it's being upfront and being prepared for that. So you are formulating to those higher standards versus finding out later that, hey, I went off of maybe a standard that I shouldn't have. That we kind of talked about earlier a little bit, as far as how clean right now is a little bit of self-regulating. So looking to those retailers that you plan to try to get into and making sure that you're abiding by those at the very least.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it's like, you know, I just want to say, you know, and Kimberly, I really want you to comment on this. And before you do, I want to say that, like, I think one of the biggest white spaces that I've noticed in this whole conversation in general is that people they don't know where to turn in terms of like making sure that even though you're calling yourself a clean beauty brand, there's a lot of scientific testing that's going to have to go into your products regardless. You know, clean beauty, again, and I'm going to eventually transition this into like some other, you know, buzzwords that we love using in this industry. But like, you know, clean beauty doesn't mean that you don't need clinical trials, or you don't need toxicologists on your team, or that you don't need, you know, these experts. That definitely needs to be cleared up, I think, for a lot of like smaller brands that don't understand this the way that you guys are explaining it. But yeah, that's my little rant. But yeah, Kimberly, I really want you to chime in on this this topic.
So there's a few things. So if you're on that journey of you want to launch a brand and you're figuring out how to go clean, get clean, be clean, right? You've got the Severa side, right, which is all of your inputs. And then there's this other way that you can actually maybe do a little bit of reality check or something to keep you honest. And so on the e-com side, you can plug in something called Clean for Me, and it will scan through your ingredient list, and it will allow the consumer to click on the different ingredients, and then it gives them a definition of what that is. And so you can create like education and transparency, and even throw in a little advocacy right there without too much trouble. Like, you don't have to build the dictionary. It's coming from the service. But also, I think as you're going along and you're making trade-offs, if you know at the end that that's all going to be hyper transparent to the end user, it's kind of a little way to keep you honest.
Yeah, and I love
You know
that
how
you
sometimes you can lose your way? You can lose your way. You can lose your way.
it's easy to lose your way. There's a lot of information. And I think that especially with this whole idea of, how they say there's the UK standards for clean, and then there's the US standards, and there's these long lists of things. And it's like, you know what? Why don't you just put everything in one freaking place? And let's really think about it from an overall thing, standpoint of, okay, if I'm a new entrepreneur, I want to make the best possible product out there that I can make and follow all these guidelines. I should have one resource I can go to. And I think that's something that we really need to like push in this industry. If we're going to make clean beauty, which it is a huge category of beauty, and it's a huge, like there's a lot of market potential there. There's a lot of money being fueled into this area. We need to at least, I think, invest in those kind of databases and those resources that you're referring to, Kimberly.
It seems to me that like the moral imperative is that clean should be the baseline. It should be the default. Like it shouldn't be that clean beauty is this rogue outlier that the rest of the world is quickly adopting. It should be the default.
Yeah. And I think people are trying to make it that, but it's just, that's why we're holding this panel, because there's, even with something, good intentions, that's great to have, but you have to really still have a model in place and some sort of a mental idea, and protocol that you should go through. So I want to actually transition this a little bit, and I want to talk about some other terms that fall into this category of clean beauty. And I see a lot of brands doing this, and it really upsets me, to be honest with you guys, is this idea of greenwashing. I know that it's a huge topic. I know that a lot of magazines, publications have been talking about it, but I really want to get your viewpoints on this, because, there's a lot of brands that are really monetizing off of the hard work of brands such as yours that are really going and doing a deep dive and really defining what clean should be. So I want to get, just what you guys think about the whole greenwashing thing. And maybe, again, Janelle, maybe you can start us off. I always call on Janelle, but
okay.
She really sets the stage for the conversation, I feel like.
She's got a wealth of knowledge too, so she's perfect.
Yeah.
No, I find it deeply troubling. I'm right there with you. And I think Kimberly mentioned it too. We just have a moral obligation to do better and to do more. Unfortunately, because there is no regulation and no industry standard, which I think we absolutely need some policy advocates as well to kind of change our standards. The best that consumers can do to avoid greenwashing or get around greenwashing is do just a little bit of research. I think one of the things I find with these brands that do the green or the clean washing is that there's no there there. If you go to their website, all of the things that we're talking about, there's a lot of actually incredible brands doing great work in this space, and they tell you what they're doing. They show you what they're doing. They're very transparent about what they're doing. And that's why transparency was one of my key words earlier, because it is the best way to get around it. No brand is perfect today, so I'd be cautious of any brand that is claiming perfection, but there are a lot of brands that are telling you this is where we stand from a toxicology perspective. This is our manufacturing process. This is how we choose and make our formulas. Like, listen to those brands. If they're telling you this information, it's because they have it, and they're not just putting meaningless claims on their package. So it's a little bit more work. And I think Taylor mentioned this too earlier, but I will say the retailers, I'm really excited for the standards that the Sephoras, the Targets, the Walmarts are starting to have, and they're putting labeling on their shelves, and there you have really strict requirements on how you get onto that shelf. So there's just a little bit more trust there that you can have if your brand is showing up in these spaces in the retailer. But again, the onus is still on the consumer right now. I'm hoping one day we can change that and put all of the responsibility on us, so that it's just one less stress for them, and they can, enjoy themselves shopping all these great brands.
Absolutely. See, every time she speaks, I just like literally like my brain just celebrates. Like I honestly, and Kimberly, I heard you like almost chiming in. So I want you to add on to that, whatever you were thinking.
Oh, no, she's 100% right. I think you can, the onus is on the consumer right now, which is unfair, but at the same time, as a brand, there's nothing I like better than when I get that email asking a question that I hadn't thought to answer first, right? That isn't in the FAQ, and I want those questions. It helps us be better. As a consumer myself, I've gotten really good at asking the questions. So when I turn and learn, right, I flip over that bottle and I'm looking at that ingredient list and I see it just says fragrance, I will send an email in. And the funny part is that a lot of times the customer service teams who initially get that, they don't have the answer, but they have to go searching for the answer. So you got to find your patients. But as consumers, by us asking those questions, as consumers, for us paying attention to those ingredient labels and pushing on claims, just because the name of the product is something natural doesn't mean it's natural. And that
Yeah.
turn and learn, right? Turn and learn, and you'll know right away it's not natural because you can't pronounce anything in it.
Yeah, yeah. And also redefining what you mean by natural too, right? I mean, that's a whole different rabbit hole to go down because natural, yeah, there's a lot of compounds, especially when it comes to organic chemistry. I don't know why no one ever wants to talk about organic chemistry, probably because it's a nightmare to take it. I remember, flashbacks.
I'm guessing, yeah, college PTSD.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, don't even get me started. But I did surprisingly, pretty well for that. I give myself credit, but I will say, organic chemists, I think, do not get enough credit, and the whole area doesn't, because the words have such meaning in them, because it's one of the only disciplines, I believe, of science that names things for exactly what they look like on a molecular level. So if you have a benzene compound, that means the benzene word's going to be in the word, you know what I mean? So it's like they really, organic chemistry is something I think the consumer needs to like embrace, because it's going to make you better understand the structure of the ingredients that we're talking about, and what the difference between something that's synthesized in the lab versus what you mentioned, Kimberly, naturally occurring, because there is a difference. Right now, I think the most recent Nobel Prize in chemistry was given to two amazing scientists who were able to finally, separate because everything exists in like mirror forms, like molecules exist in equal quantities in mirror forms on a chemistry level, and they were able to find a way to like separate that. And it just random tangent, but what I'm saying is that it is important to understand the chemistry. It is important to understand how scientists come up with the names of what we do consider as still natural, and so to not be afraid of that, right? If you see a long organic chemistry word, and to not immediately think, oh, this is not natural. Yes, it is. You just need to understand what it means,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as a brand, you have to assume, like, you cannot assume that your consumer is dumb, right?
Yeah.
Or that they're disinterested or dispassionate, and find a way to bridge that gap of like, what does that ingredient mean? And as a consumer, you have to hold those brands accountable for giving them your wallet, and giving them your love, and say, like, what is in here? How is this made? Where is it sourced? I've gotten some really incredibly detailed questions down to the, what is the GMO level of XYZ ingredient? Like, just,
Yeah.
and I love it. I love it when that comes in, because it means there's one more consumer who's out there really holding brands accountable.
Absolutely, 100%. I completely agree with you. And actually, Taylor, I need you to really chime in here, because let's be honest, with a baby care line, you really can't greenwash, because guess what? Babies and infant skin is the most sensitive you're going to get. And so I really want you to comment on this greenwashing, thing, and tell me what you think about it, and, your whole perspective.
Absolutely. I think it's greenwashing, a little bit of green marketing that's taking place is what we see a lot across the board. And I think Kimberly did a really good job of touching on it from like the first standpoint of like what the consumer sees is like the name a lot. You'll see brands where they will try to put a spin on a term that the consumer has always seen as something that's clean, green, eco-friendly, and they're automatically assuming, just based off of looking, whether it's the product name, the brand name, that it's clean. And I think one easy way to just go ahead and, on the consumer side, do a quick fact check is looking at the certifications on that specific, with that brand, with that specific product. Are they EWG verified? Is it vegan and cruelty-free certified? Everything down to that level, like doing a quick scan. There's plenty of apps out there now at this point. I think one of them being like Think Dirty, even, where scanning that label on the back of a product when you're in-store shopping to get an understanding of the full breakdown of everything that's within there, and getting that scorecard to see, is what's in here safe for me, for my baby, really? Just because with baby skin being so sensitive, it's new to the world. They, their body goes ahead and loses water more quickly than an adult. So it's also going to be very similar with the ingredients that are being put on their skin, as far as the way it's going to affect them. So really getting an understanding of what's that difference between natural, what's that difference between clean, and being able to make a purchase based off of the knowledge that you can easily go ahead and grab from these certifications. I think certifications are very important. It allows the consumer to go ahead and know that there's a third party that's looked in this, and it's not just up to the brand to go ahead and do their own validation, knowing that, as we already touched on here, clean for a lot of people, knowing that there's no one specific regulatory, like, across the board, is those certifications help go ahead and clear up, I think, a little bit of the thoughts that are going through mom's head. Is this safe? What can I go ahead and use? Which is the best product to go ahead and grab?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one thing I really wanted to actually, I was very excited for you to be in this panel, because I really think that Pipette should come out with a list of the ingredients, because like literally I know from like just my pediatric rotations and just working with pediatric patients, is like, you cannot BS what reacts with a little baby's skin. You can't, you can't fake it, you can't pretend that it's what it is. So it would be really cool to have this, like, almost like pediatrician verified, and like, obviously like a list of things for people who have, for example, really sensitive skin. And I think that's really important from a science perspective, because everybody right now is talking about the microbiome. And one thing I really wanted to talk to you specifically about, Taylor, was the microbiome, because babies are really what we need to be studying when it comes to microbiome, the skin's microbiome development. That's where it all begins. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I'm glad you touched on even the pediatrician tested and dermatologist tested, because that's something that we look at when going ahead and producing any new product. Any products we have on the market is making sure that it's got both those validations there along with the clinical testing. That's huge. But getting onto the topic of the microbiome, and kind of also touching point on what Kimberly brought up earlier about squalane, is really getting an understanding of baby skin from the birthing process all the way up to that 1-year-old mark. And when babies are born, they're born with this white coating on their body, which is known as the vernix. And it's really the introductory of like baby's first natural moisturizer. It's what's protecting their skin. And this white coating historically for like many years was being wiped off baby's skin right after birth. Baby was being handed over to mom and they were wiping that down. And over time, we've learned that this really does act as a barrier, a protective barrier for the skin. And so now it's being encouraged to go ahead and rub it in. And the way it's able to act as a protective barrier for their skin is the most abundant lipid within the vernix is squalane. And squalane essentially goes ahead and it is a molecule that's within that goes ahead and acts as like a super moisturizer. It protects the skin, it keeps it supple, and babies have an abundance of it. And as you get older, it slowly starts to deplete. So when formulating our products, we really wanted to keep that in mind and make sure the ingredients we were putting into our products is something that baby skin would readily recognize. So formulated our products with squalane that is derived from sugarcane was a big thing for us.
That's very interesting, and it's interesting that you were able to derive it. See, again, plants, like they just, everything's there in nature. You just have to look. But one thing I just wanted to add, and I think it's so interesting that you discussed the science of that coating, because when, again, going back to the microbiome, I think, you know, I saw a post the other day, you guys, and it really, the scientist in me just was like so irritated that I ended up messaging the executive editor of that publication, being like, listen, you know, this is just not right, and it's not your fault, but, you know, all that. But anyway, my point is, the microbiome develops. It's not something that just automatically exists. And so everything Taylor said about that squalene and those lipids that are there, they're feeding the few bacteria. So when a baby is birthed through the vaginal canal, the flora that's in the mom's vaginal canal is the first quote unquote microbiome that the baby's skin is exposed to. So that is the starting place. And then using this, you know, this coating that's on the baby, that's almost like a nutrient source for these bacteria so that they can populate in a, you know what I mean, in a better way and really form the microbiome of the skin. So understanding just that, even, you know, as a general consumer, it's going to really make you rethink when you invest in products that are claiming to be, hey, we're microbiome baseline. Well, what do you mean? You know what I mean? Like, I really get very confused. So I think that that's such a brilliant point that you brought up. And I'd love Janelle and Kimberly, if you guys want to comment about anything about the microbiome that you find to be interesting, or, you know, anything.
Yeah, well, it's a topic we talk about a lot on our brand, the microbiome, and really for us, how do we protect your hand microbiome? Because we know your skin is like one of the biggest microbiome ecosystems that you have. And we look at a lot about, we know that when your skin is dry and cracked and compromised, that cracked skin actually feeds more of the bad bacteria and gives them just more space to operate, and you lose more of the good. We're very intentional with our products and our formulas. That's why you find aloe and glycerin in our formula. And we're super excited that we'll soon be adding hyaluronic acid to our hand sanitizers in Q1 next year. With the idea that we know most, you know, hand sanitizers do dry out your skin. So it's like you're killing bacteria, but you're also creating an environment where more bacteria on your hands and skins can, or bad bacteria, I should say, could thrive. And so we want to make sure that we are, you know, helping to keep that microbiome in balance. But I can see how this is hard for brands. We've had like a lot of conversations about where does the science go? How are we identifying the good, the bad bacteria? How are we then identifying the food sources for the good, and the right ways to go after the bad that don't compromise your skin health, and potentially other microbiomes in the future? It's a very exciting topic, but it is a very important topic, because microbiome for us, it's at the center of your health and your vitality and your wellness. And so it's really important to keep it strong and keep it in balance. So we talk a lot about it on the OLIKA brand too.
Absolutely. And you know what? I just want to say OLIKA is like one of, honestly, when it comes to hand sanitizer, I don't think you can get more of an expert than being a medical professional, because we're constantly like, we bathe in it. And honestly, all you guys have done, I just want to say, wow, you know, OLIKA has done such a stunning job of creating a product that it works, first of all, you know, and second of all, it's like promoting the idea that it's okay for your hands to feel good after you use hand sanitizer. You don't have to have cracked, nasty, scaly hands just because you use hands. You know what I mean? Like, that's, I think, and again, that feeds into quote clean beauty, is like, you know, optimization. And you guys have truly optimized hand sanitizer, if you ask me, as a consumer. So I love that. Kimberly, I would love to get your opinion about the microbiome, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so as a clinical clean wellness brand, we in our first focus being on skin, right? Having like and healthy skin on like the best skin. Obviously, the microbiome is a big part of that conversation. And in our case, it all goes back to the clinicals and to the scientists, right? So we rely heavily on them, even down to like marketing claims, where, you know, there is a very tight coupling with our science teams. They're amazing. You talk about like, you could fall down a rabbit hole of conversation. So I'm trying to figure out how to articulate it exactly, but as a brand, it's really important, like for us in this launch in particular, that we're really leaning into that science. We're really letting the trials, the clinical data tell us what is and what isn't, as opposed to making it up as we go along, which maybe is what you're referring to with some of the random graphics you will see on the interwebs.
Yes, yes. And that staying true to that science is something that I think, you've brought this up multiple times in this conversation, Kimberly, and I am so thankful that you've done that, because this is something I think everyone listening, whether you're a consumer, entrepreneur, enthusiast, I don't know, geek, you need to understand that science cannot be substituted. Clean beauty and green beauty and sustainability, all of these words do not exclude science. And it's exactly what Kimberly said. Like, you have to have a science forward approach to make sure that you're doing it right and that you're really putting the right stuff out there. And, again, Kim, going back to you had mentioned education for the consumer, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very early in the conversation. And it all ties in. If you're, as a brand, I think if you do it right, and like you said, you consult the scientists and stuff, the education aspect comes naturally. It's easier.
It does. I mean, I think if you think about, even marketing can use that information, right? Because every brand and marketing team has a conversation about the content calendar and about what are we going to talk about and how are we going to get people interested. And there's so much rich stuff to work with there that serves both masters, right? Of getting the brand out there, but also educating and empowering the consumer. And so there's just a lot of untapped potential in the science.
Yeah, absolutely.
From one nerd to another.
Oh, yes. Those are the best conversations, by the way. We're all fellow nerds. I love it. One question I do have for all of you, though, I'm not going to lie, I always wonder, what are some of the barriers that you guys face when it comes to really translating in a, I guess, layman terms, and really educating your consumers on that science and on these best practices that that we've all discussed here, like what are some of those hurdles that as a brand you go through when it comes to that, getting that knowledge out there? And Taylor, maybe you can get us started, because this time I'm not gonna put Janelle on the spot.
Absolutely. I think you definitely hit the nail on the head there as far as trying to put something in layman's terms, because I think even Kimberly was really touching on it right here, is knowing that science. And sometimes the product development team, they have an abundance of knowledge, and I think because they have that abundance of knowledge, sometimes there's that thought that the consumer has this abundance of knowledge. And so really, as the marketing team, it's our responsibility to go ahead and have those sit down, like roundtable conversations with them, where we're able to learn wealth of knowledge from them. And it's like, rapid spitfire for questions, finding out this. And from there, sitting down and trying to digest, how do we tell this story to like mom? How do we tell this story to somebody that's looking to make cleaner choices? So really going ahead and determining what those key pieces, those nuggets are, and putting it in a digestible version. So like with social media, we see a lot more people turning to social media, using infographics whenever possible to make something a lot more digestible. And I think really being a brand that is consumer focused and willing to engage with the consumer. So again, as like Kimberly and Janelle touched on, when the consumer is reaching out with questions, is having that information to go ahead and have that dialogue with them to really give them all the information they need, but also having a really strong e-commerce platform where people have enough information if they have the time to go ahead and do the digging, and it's in a digestible manner, that it's not like she's sitting there going ahead and having to do a Google search and it's like, what does this mean? But it's something where it's like, I have a good understanding, I have the information I need to go ahead and make a purchase, let alone do more. If she does want to do more research, she has enough that's right here to make that purchase, but she also has enough to go ahead and know where to start if she wants to research. Because I hear that a lot from people, from attending some of these mom shows, where it's like, I don't even know where to start, is what happens. So being that resource, being that advocate for them.
I love that. And Janelle, I want you to add to that and share your view and any hurdles that you've seen especially with, you know, a company that's so based in this idea of, you know, hygiene and especially with, you know, COVID and the way it's been and the culture around that. So I'd love for you to comment.
Right. And I'll start off saying I 100% agree with everything Taylor said. I think how do you distill this down to consumers in a digestible, crispy, engaging way? We know everybody has an attention span that's like 6 seconds. So how do you like get these core messages out there is really hard. But I touched on this earlier. I think equally as hard is how do we educate ourselves? I go back to the process that we had with Cyvera Lens. And part of it is putting in your own requirements and lists, right? So we created our own do not use list, but we were like, where do we go? We have 16 states. We have the European standards. We have retail standards. So we probably have 65 lists in there that we're screening our ingredients against, which sounds very thorough, but it's also very confusing. Like, do we need 66? Are we missing like a couple that we should have in there? And then there's varying opinions on what is safe. When we were looking at formulating some of our products, you know, sometimes there's byproducts of working with natural ingredients that creates harmful ingredients. And so we were looking at them, and sometimes those byproducts can be in like the parts per million. And so we were putting standards around that. Is it 100 parts per million? Is it 50? Is it more? Like what really defines what is safe and dangerous? Is it like risk? Is it exposure? Is it an equation of risk versus exposure? It's a lot. And I'm not a chemist. I'm not a toxicologist. I'm not a scientist. And so wading through all of that information to make the absolute best decision that you can, because I believe in humanity. I believe there's a lot of good actors out there and they're trying to do the best that they can, but it is a lot to wade through and figure out how do you do that. And I think that's actually one of the biggest hurdles that's facing us in the industry.
Yeah, and I love everything that you said. And I think that it's brilliant that you brought up the term parts per million because, you know, and I'm so happy as like, you know, just a science geek to see that we're starting to have these terms come out in the marketing world of beauty, and like people, you know, are acknowledging things like, you know, Daltons and kilodaltons and like what is able to cross the skin barrier and those kind of words. I mean, you used to hear that stuff in like general physics courses and stuff. You know what I mean? It was never in the public eye. So I think you've made such a great point there. Is that, you know, really, I think sometimes you just have to throw words at people and be like, if I do this often enough, you're eventually going to understand what I mean. So I really like that you brought that up. You know, and Kimberly, of course, I would love for you to comment. You've been, I think, the most science forward person in this whole panel so far, and I love every time you comment on the science.
Well, I'm gonna come at it and surprise you. So I'm gonna come at it with a slightly different angle about the challenge, and this is about like how you bring that education to the consumer to meet them where they are. So each product has a different focus. It has a different primary customer, and those customers want those messages in very different ways. You may have one segment that is looking for more of an uplifting message, right? By joining us, by doing X, you are, you know, helping put this positive thing into the world. You have others that are more of a prevention mindset. This versus this. You're preventing future harm. You're preventing future decay of the earth, whatever that is. And then you have others that are more like, let's say, like value system oriented. So it's really important as you're looking at this and getting your audiences excited to understand where they are and how they want to receive that message, that they don't tune you out. Because it is one thing to know that we're going to go out and advocate for them when they don't even know they need an advocate. And it's another to be completely ignored. Your good intentions, all that love and sweat
I know,
put into it.
the heartache.
Yeah, so it really means that from a consumer research perspective, you have to get out there and talk to them. You have to see where they are, and you just need to meet them where they are. You can't be preachy. Sometimes you have to be a cheerleader.
Well, it goes back
Absolutely.
to also what Taylor said, right? It's about like showing that people, like, you got to be, and also what Janelle's been saying this whole time: transparency, transparency, transparency. You have to show people. And I think, this is something I really wanted to make sure we talked about. I know we had discussed this before the panel took place, and it's something that I think is a great way to really incorporate all of those layers, Kimberly, that you just brought up about, education. And that's the idea of using products and investing in products that you're going to use fully, not use once, twice, three times, maybe leave it on your shelf, let it sit there and create all sorts of, molecular, byproducts and degraded, metabolites and stuff. So that's a question, and that's a topic I want all three of you to really chime in on, because, what, in your opinion, can we do, or what makes, consumers want to come back, and not just come back, but like, really use the products they invest in? So we can get started with Taylor if you want.
Absolutely. I think as a Pipette, one of the big things is we definitely don't want products to sitting on shelf and not moving. So whether that's inside the consumer shelf, so in your medicine cabinet, in the bathroom, on baby's changing table, or actual shelf as far as the retailer, and it's not moving and it's not connecting for the consumer to go ahead and make that purchase. So a big thing for us was going ahead and making sure that it was creating those essential items. Those items that we know people are going to go ahead and it's an everyday use item, and also items that have multi-purpose use to them. So multi-purpose use for baby, mom, the whole entire family, and products that can be used for baby, mom, and the whole entire family. So it's not just for one specific person, but something that could go ahead and be used across the entire family. So one product we have in particular that's really been phenomenal at that is our baby balm. And while it does have the name baby in the title, it's definitely one of those things that we hear everybody going ahead and using. This is perfect for going ahead and helping out with my child's chapped lips, chapped nose, any area that's needing a little extra moisture. Now, from people that are going ahead that are older that are using it, this is a really great foot mask. This is great for going ahead and adding as like a top layer to my face when I need a little extra moisture to apply on top of my moisturizer when I go to sleep at night. So it's something that we know everybody's able to use. It's not something that's just going to sit there and, oh, I don't have enough of it to go ahead and use for my baby. It's something that's going to be used for the entire family. And we know it's not going to go to waste, to the point you brought up.
I love that. And, I just want to, I really love what you said. And, I'm not going to lie, I grew up watching my mom do this, and it was like, I never understood it because I was, stupid and a child and didn't get it. But like now I get it. She always used to use baby lotion, like the baby, just moisturizer. And she only used that. And she used it for her hands and her feet, and she swore by it. She didn't go invest in these big, adult companies. She was all about the baby products. And I was like, why the heck is my mom buying baby products, for her self-care? So, and it makes sense because it's, again, and also I think what you said, Taylor, I think that also would help so much for the entrepreneurs and the consumers, because it adds simplicity. It adds this idea of simplicity to the conversation.
Absolutely. It's one of those things too, where just being budget conscious, not everybody has the money to go ahead and buy a huge assortment. So having a very niche treatment product is not always within everybody's budget. So keeping that in mind and understanding, how can we go ahead and try to make the most of one product, not only from thinking from when this product's used in the life cycle of it and when it ends up in the trash or potentially going to recycle, but really when it's in somebody's home. Don't have an abundance of products. It's sitting there by the time it's opened, it becomes expired because they haven't been able to move through it quickly enough. So to that point, similar to your mother, we've gotten plenty of reviews where people are reviewing many of our baby products where they're like, I don't have children, but this product is phenomenal. I've been using this in my daily routine, and it makes us really happy to hear that there are people out there that are taking the products that we have and using these hacks to go ahead and use like baby oil in a bath or shower to help moisturize skin even more and just give it that little extra suppleness. So it's really extending the life of those products so they're not just ending up in a landfill.
I love that. I really love that. And I wanna actually shift to OLIKA and Janelle and Kimberly, because let me tell you one thing that really impressed me off the bat about OLIKA's packaging was it tells you exactly the amount of uses that are contained in every single bottle of hand sanitizer. And I thought when I saw that, I mean, as little of a detail as that might seem to some people, that's huge because it tells you exactly what to expect. So I really want to talk to you guys about that and like what really led to you guys putting that right up there, front and center, and also what you think about this entire topic that we've been discussing. So
Yeah.
Janelle, it's your turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we were really choiceful about that. And it just really goes back to our carbon footprint impact. The decisions we make, yes, we're refillable, but we also think about our SKU complexity. We don't want to have like too many SKUs. That's why we don't have 30 different fragrances right now on our
Yeah.
website. That was definitely a choice because that becomes excessive, and in that excessiveness, you're creating waste with a lot of products and a lot of SKUs that aren't selling as much. But when you look at the size of our product, there's questions we get all the time about it's not as big, as the other products that are on the shelf. And that was very choiceful because even though it is a forever bottle, we're still offering you a great value with a lot of uses. And in a lot of cases, it's 15 times more the uses that you have in those bigger bottles. So, we think about that a lot at OLIKA. How do we offer that value in the experience? Because that's really what's going to bring consumers back to our brand. You hit the nail on the head earlier with, you don't have to have this trade-off with sanitizing your hands and having, dry cracked skin. You don't have to have the trade-off of buying like huge packages, and there's other ways that we look at those trade-offs for sure. But that's what's core to us is just creating these really great holistic experiences that are clean and sustainable and bring consumers back to our brand.
And I love that. And I just want to add that I really think this is important to understand. And again, this is like kind of like a sciencey statistical way of looking at it. But OLIKA's hand sanitizers also come with a nice, wonderful clip attached to them. And you can put that, like I have, on my keychain, and you end up using it's like the amount of uses over time. So you have to consider that curve. Okay. So when you're comparing how much you use, OLIKA's hand sanitizer versus the one that comes in a bottle and you can't really put it anywhere. And, that's something you have to consider because how many times are you using it and how accessible is it to you? So that's a huge, huge factor. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in there. But yeah, Kimberly, if you want to, could you add to that? Anything that you're, yeah.
I can. So this time I'm going to come at you and I'm going to say science. So when you have like a nice, let's call it a simple set of ingredients, and by simple I mean not overly complex, and you're leaning on science that you can figure out through clinicals and testing what other uses your ingredients have, right? At different concentrations, at different mixes, maybe slightly differences in formulation, right? Say a cream versus an oil. But there's probably a lot more that can be done. We've launched the first product on the roadmap of many products that's coming out of that mentality of that if you lean on the science side, we're focused on one kind of like skin solution at the moment. I guess that's what we're looking for, and there's more coming. And it's all based on just investing in the science and figuring out what else does that apply to. It's a similar mindset to Pipette, but different. It's a different circumstance.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really amazing point that you brought up, because now is my geek out moment, because I'm all about all of the different things that the ingredients can do. I know I've mentioned this before in my podcast, but I published a paper in 2013 that was literally looking at the extracts of like things like turmeric, mint, eucalyptus. There are a bunch of different ones, right? And I looked at their effect on killing off bacteria, some of the harshest bacteria that we deal with. So not just skin flora, but I also looked at the impact it had on, for example, Mycobacterium, which is one of the hardest ones to kill because it causes TB. So being able to do that and being able to say that, you know what, I'm going to go and play around and figure out what these ingredients really do. That's a huge aspect, I think, that really no one's talking about. And I really just want to stress the point that, like, everything Kimberly said, I completely back up, because I genuinely believe in my heart that we're all born as natural scientists. We're all inclined to be, just really curious about things. So I urge you out there, use OLIKA's hand sanitizer and then put your finger on a petri dish and let the bacteria grow and then compare it. And you know what I mean? Like, do little things that prove to you that these things are working, So yeah, I love that. I love that point. And does anyone have anything else they want to add to anything that we've talked about so far?
I'll say the one thing that I absolutely love is seeing how much brands are really emphasizing on the science, because that is definitely the reoccurring word that we have been talking about today, is really putting a lot of investment behind the science and going ahead and marketing the science and making it more transparent to the consumer. And as we touched on earlier, trying to make it digestible, because I think before there was a little bit of this like faux pas, almost like science was scary. Science should not go ahead. Like within specifically, I could speak to Pipette, like don't want to associate that with baby. Like that's not good. And seeing this big shift where it's really educating on all the benefits that science is able to do, producing sustainable ingredients, finding alternative, sources for things. It really makes me happy knowing that there is this big shift. I know we're just barely at the tip of that iceberg and there's so much more for us to go ahead and do, but creating not only better for you products, but better for the planet.
Absolutely. I love that, Taylor. Yeah. And yeah, I agree. And, this has been the best conversation, you guys. Seriously. Like, I have been just loving everything, all the insight you guys have provided. Thank you so much, Janelle, Kimberly, Taylor. Thank you so much for this opportunity to host you and to learn from you. And I hope everyone listening, you've taken away a few, I guess, benchmarks, or maybe a little bit of a protocol, about how to approach the idea of clean beauty or green beauty or some of these buzzwords that we hear about. And, just leave us some feedback, tell us what you think. And, we may do a part 2 if we want, if you guys are, up for it. I'm up for it. So yeah, this is definitely a conversation I think that needs to be had. And I'm so honored that you guys had this with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
This is great.
Thank you. Honor was truly mine. And everyone listening, please, like I said, we're going to be putting this everywhere for Skincare Anarchy. I'm going to be doing this as obviously the podcast, but we're going to be sending out a newsletter. So if you have not subscribed to our email list, make sure you do that, because a lot of it will be quotes and information that, that we have heard here today. And it'll be a lot of information in there too. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you also go follow all 3 of these amazing brands on Instagram, on all social media. I mean, I'm just so happy to see that there are people like you guys out there that are entrepreneurs and doing things so ethically and morally correct. Then it's really, it's nice. It's a breath of fresh air is what I'm trying to say. All right, guys. So I will be back next time, and thank you so much.